You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions. This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/intotheportal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Bray.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
And we're back today, or tonight, or this evening, or morning, whenever you're listening, with a really fun discussion with our longtime friend, Adam Benedict of Pine Barrens Institute.
Yeah, a wealth of knowledge this good sir is, so really excited to have him on the show and for you guys to listen to what he has to say about the beast of Bray Road. Mm-hmm. Before we get into right into the interview, though, we wanted to touch on a few things about Adam, about his work, and about an ongoing project that has finally come to fruition that's going to be a really amazing resource for Into the Portal moving forward. So yeah, longtime friend of the show, an accomplished paranormal scholar. He hails from Wisconsin, so right in the heart of this story for tonight's episode. And he focuses his efforts on uncovering the unknown and mysterious, including many obscure cryptozoological creatures featured on his website, which is the Pine Barrens Institute, or pinebarrensinstitute.com. So yeah, the Pine Barrens Institute is an online cryptozoological Midwest folklore and historic Fortean newspaper reference site, which is based out of Janesville, Wisconsin. And the focus of the site is to document, catalog, and help spread factual information pertaining to the folklore, legends, and true stories involving both well-known and lesser-known cryptid creatures, obscure boogeymen, and forgotten monsters from all over the world. So he touches on pretty much everything.
That's a pretty epic description. We pulled that from his website. It's really a wealth of resources, so we encourage everyone to go check it out.
Definitely.
And especially his latest project. So we're talking about Monsters in Print. That's the title of his latest book that he just published, and it's doing really well.
Yeah.
And we got a copy courtesy of winning a contest of his, so we were stoked on that.
Definitely.
And we've been reading it. Like, it's just one of those ones where you can pick it up. It can be a bathroom reader. It can be when you just have 5 minutes and you're just like waiting for the bus or something.
That's the best thing about it.
Exactly. And my favorite part, so let's just talk about the description here. I pulled this from the website again. Mm-hmm. It's just a really well nuanced little ditty here. So it says this collection of over 170 plus articles direct from newspapers of the 1800s and 1900s brings some of the most bizarre, amazing, and incredible stories of true monster encounters out of the past and into your hands. Everything you read in this book is real. Real in the sense that it was really written, but still unknown if what was written really happened that way for real.
Right.
The decision to believe is yours. Love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Because we always want to believe, so.
Of course.
It's incredible.
We're walking fox multers for sure.
Definitely. And that was actually, that was a really succinct little thing. I love this because it is raw. It's unedited. He hasn't altered anything in these articles that he sourced, and it's from a collection. So these are primary materials. And let me just read here. They are actually from... So both the Library of Congress and the National Endowment for the Humanities, and those are both historical archives that have collected and preserved these amazing little pieces. And it starts in the 1820s and works its way up decade by decade. Yep. And you get, like we already said, just a wealth of everything from mermaids to...
frogmen to Sasquatch-like creatures, to dogman-like creatures, to all kinds of craziness.
Hairy hominids, all sorts of stuff.
Everything that we're into on the show, everything that we know you guys are into listening to the show, it's also like a very affordable book too. You know what I mean? Like, it's not one of those ones you go on there and it's like $100 book or something, right? It is. You guys got to pick it up. Amazon is the main place to get it. So
we'll have all the links included in our show notes. You can also just go to the pinebarrensinstitute.com and click on their shop.
Yes.
And it's the links right there too. And we'll include links to all that. So yeah, make sure you check it out.
Mm-hmm. So, are we ready to jump into this little discussion with Adam?
Totally. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Hello, I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
And we have a special guest with us today, don't we, Andrew?
Indeed we do. Joining us today is none other than Adam Benedict from the Pine Barrens Institute. What's going on, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Fantastic to be here. I listen all the time. So it's crazy to be on the other side.
Oh, that's awesome. This has kind of been, like we said before we started recording, a super, super long time coming kind of on the show here. And it was pretty serendipitous. It was perfect timing, really, because we're covering creatures that are definitely native to your neck of the woods and neighboring states and things like that. So yeah, we appreciate you coming on the show. We've been dabbling in your book a little bit recently, and there's going to be a few little tidbits that we pull out of that for some upcoming episodes too. So I'm pretty excited about that. And congratulations on the book, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, okay, today we wanted to bring you on because obviously you're from Wisconsin, familiar with the Beast of Bray Road. You actually sent us a literal chunk of Bray Road a little while ago, which was one of the coolest things we've ever been sent before. But, I mean, right now we basically started our part 1 and 1.5 of this series diving into just Dogman, the Michigan Dogman, this idea of upright canine bipedal hybrid enigmas that are stalking the woods of Wisconsin, Alaska, Michigan. There's some Canadian cases as well. I guess before we really get into any like creature descriptions or Beast of Bray specifically, like what is your familiarity with like Dogmen just in broad strokes?
The whole overview of Dogmen didn't really start to become a major blip on my radar until I guess just a few years ago is when it really started to take on its own thing as Dogmen. Growing up, I was familiar with it, but it was always referred to, as werewolves. So eventually, it started out as werewolves, and then people were saying, "Oh, it's probably something Sasquatch related." But just relatively over the course of a few years, it's become its own thing pretty much. It's it's a definite separate thing that has become definitely very Midwestern and very upper United States compared to like Sasquatch. So I guess it's kind of new, but it's still grounded, if that makes sense, in like old descriptions and terms.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, that's a good segue here because in our episode 1.5 and a little bit in the first episode, there was a lot of dabbling in this idea, like Amber brought it up too, like the idea of like skinwalkers and the connections to indigenous folklore and creatures that go way further back than European contact. And we'll get into a little bit more of that in a sec, but I guess that was one of the things about, like, we covered the Monster Quest episode, America's Wolfman. Are you familiar with that episode at all?
Yeah, they actually interviewed the girl that was interviewed in it in Janesville. I went to school with her.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was I believe she was a year behind me, but the location in which that took place is probably only about 10 minutes away from where I live right now.
Right. Crazy, man.
That's incredible.
It's such a small world.
Oh,
really.
definitely.
You know what's kind of funny though? It's like this story. Oftentimes, when you read like any accounts, like whatever, you're cruising the internet, mysterious universe. Basically, every article it'll start with the 1930s and it'll say ever since the mid 1930s. When I guess that's what I was trying to get to with the whole idea of like indigenous folklore. It goes way further back than that. Would you want to get into a bit of a creature description here, though, Amber?
Well, we definitely covered the gambit in part 1, and I would say part 1.5 as well, but just a few descriptors, I guess. Hey, we're talking about a bipedal, very hairy, wolf-like creature, dog-wolf hybrid, usually standing on 2 feet, like I said, bipedal, usually about 7 feet tall. This thing, it is almost like... I've seen so many descriptions now, and it's somewhere in the range of about 700 pounds. Could be 400, could be 1,000, according to who you talk to. But again, right, we're talking about something that has brownish gray fur, almost a little bit mangy perhaps, and maybe perhaps has either predatory or scavenger-like behaviors attached to it as well.
Right. Okay, well, before we start grilling Adam about this monster, do you want to let's jump into the original story. So I'm going to just go through this sort of like just the broad strokes of this account.
Specific to the Beast of Bray Road.
Specific to the Beast of Bray Road, the 1936, what a lot of people will say was the jumping off point of this, even though it really does tie into a lot of other creature sightings leading up to the 1930s. But there was a guy by the name of, wow, this last name's kind of hard to pronounce, Mark Shakelman? That's not too hard.
Shakelman.
Yeah. Basically, this guy, according to some sources, he was a night watchman. He was employed by the St. Coletta Convent, and he was driving home, Highway 18, just east of Jefferson County, Wisconsin, which is an area obviously you'd be familiar with, Adam. Evidently, he's in the area of indigenous burial mounds. Obviously, there's some territory like this in the area, so he's driving through on just a regular Highway 18, but nearby there's these burial mounds visible from the road. And the classic story kind of goes that, of course, he approaches these mounds as he's driving and sees someone and or something very, very large standing near one of these mounds. And as he approaches even closer, he can see that it's clearly not human, but he's still more or less unable to make out exactly what he's looking at. But as he gets even closer, we end up with the classic creature that Amber just described, a 7-foot tall, 500-pound, the classic Beast of Bray Road, standing there bipedally, seemingly digging into the mound, which is, that's a rabbit hole that we can go down in a second for sure. But that is the original account. And I don't even know, Adam, when's the first time you heard that? And what are your thoughts just on that origin story?
The first time I, the first time I heard that was probably when Linda Godfrey's book came out, The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf. And that breaks down a lot of the timeline of what happened. Prior to the book, I never heard about that. That wasn't as widely known around the state, unless you were really deep into the Fortean cryptozoology, interests back in the early 90s when all this came out. So when I heard that, it was later on. But to me, this one has always seemed weird because it didn't really show up until after all of the, spotlight was on the creature itself. And it diverts so much from what happened originally on the road that it seems almost like it's something completely separate. That's how I've always taken it.
Right. It's so funny, too, how, and going back to just Amber's description there, too, this idea that comparatively to the the Michigan Dogman, where right in the name, it's Dogman, some of these descriptions lean a little bit away from that, with the idea of it looking more like a bear or some sort of a hybrid creature like that.
Yeah, some people have suggested a mange-infested bear. Some people have suggested it's actually a wahila, so an ancient wolf species. And a lot of these stories that I was reading as far as specific to Bray Road was that this was sighted on all fours a lot more frequently than, say, the Dogman stories that we read out in part 1 of our series. Which
does, I guess, lend a little bit more to the idea of a wahila, or I think I don't have it in front of me.
Or a coy dog. Some people suggested that, a sort of coyote dog or coy wolf. I've heard that too.
Right.
So just almost like a donkey version of a wolf or hybrid. You know what I mean?
You made it
sound
or a
mule,
less
sorry, not
way,
a donkey, a mule.
A mule. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Well, where do you want to go from here, Amber?
Well, I'm just really curious about your experience, Adam, as far as growing up in that area when you were, say, a young child and growing up into your teens. And did you ever have any experiences yourself or any sightings or knew anyone besides the one that you already mentioned previously that was featured on Monster Quest?
So I never had any experiences myself with anything, that could be described as related to the Beast of Bray Road itself. But growing up, when all this was going down in the early 90s, 90, 91, 92, it was big talk around the school cafeteria. Everyone was talking about, did you hear about the werewolf? Did you hear, not far away, they shot a werewolf. Someone killed a werewolf. People have been killed by werewolves. The little kid rumors that take off. So, we were scared. Oh man, there's a werewolf that's, not far away from we live. Slowly that added, on top of that, it got added that, the police force is now, putting out silver bullets. All their cops have to carry silver bullets in case they come across the werewolf. What added to the realism of this for me, and I think some of the people in my class at the time, is that when this was hitting the news and taking place of monsters, of people that were, could possibly be harmed, eaten, killed, conveniently, this is taking place at the exact same time that Jeffrey Dahmer was on trial, of people actually being, eaten and cannibalized.
Right.
So you're seeing pictures of someone who's actually doing this, and then you're hearing about there's someone running around, Elkhorn, a possible monster that's also doing this, and it just added to that. This fear is actually real. So it was a crazy time, actually, because that's all anyone would talk about, like eating lunch. Is the werewolf.
That's too funny. The police carrying the silver bullets is just a nice cherry on top to that story, I think, for sure.
And I'm not gonna lie, I believed that longer than I probably should admit, that all the police had one silver bullet like on them just in case. I want to say I probably believed that up until I was like 14.
I wonder if there were actually some members of the police department that believed it themselves and just went ahead and carried a silver bullet.
Yeah,
I mean, if it was this much of a story in the early 90s, I mean, that's pretty wild.
Well, that's a very interesting way that you phrase that, Adam, and it does remind me of the Chupacabra, right? And the whole connection to, what was the movie that came out? Species. Came out just about the time, and that kind of added to the hype, supposedly, or that's how some people will tell it.
Right.
But that's a very interesting sort of pop culture, or not pop culture, but just like, well, I guess it is pop culture.
It is.
Really.
It is now. It's going on this show.
Culturally
It'll become
relevant.
pop culture.
Exactly.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
because you have something that's so completely out there that you never would believe that you would be reading and seeing about on TV, and then why not throw in a werewolf? Why can you believe the first one but not the second one, especially when it's constantly in your face? And then the town was embracing it, like diners and these little mom and pop restaurants and stuff were offering, like they were called like silver bullet specials. Some bakeries were making werewolf cookies. Like the werewolf had taken over. The Bray Road Beast had taken over Elkhorn. Everywhere you looked, it was werewolf all the time.
Right. And that's so funny too, because it's like, that's where, I mean, it's very easy for our minds to go directly to werewolf, right? I mean, especially when it's like you're working with a particular frame of reference. So it's like it's it's an upright, wolf-like creature. Obviously, werewolf is the easiest thing to go to. But in the Monster Quest episode, again, it was like, heavily emphasized on that, which is obviously like Western European kind of origins in terms of folklore, and then sort of layered on top of this idea of like skinwalkers, shapeshifters, and other creatures that are not really of this world. But I'm kind of losing my train of thought here a little bit, but I wanted to go back to the idea of like kids talking around the cafeteria, because in our part 1, there was a few lines in the documentary for part 1.5 and just stuff we read where it was like, in Michigan, they would tell kids that. It would be like kind of the cautionary tale thing. It would be like, don't stay out too late, or don't follow the cries into the woods, because it's a dogman. It isn't a coyote. It isn't this. It sort of reminds me of what you just said, the story of people talking about. It was in the popular consciousness to like, did your mom tell you to not go outside after dark when you were in the early 90s too?
I remember going camping with my cousin. We did not go far from Janesville, where we live, and it's only a few miles away from Elkhorn. But I remember my uncle specifically saying, don't stray too far away, because the werewolf's gonna get you. He's saying it jokingly. But, you're walking out there in the woods and stuff, and you're like, oh man, like the werewolf might get us. And, at that time, the pictures, the classic depiction of that Linda Godfrey drew of, the beast crouching down, eating roadkill on the side of the road,
Right.
Is fresh in your mind. And then also the classic depictions of, like Lon Chaney's Wolfman and the werewolves from The Howling. That's what, the big scary wolves. That's what was popular in Hollywood. This was now popular in newspapers. It was, as a little kid, if you were very gullible, it was a very stressful time to go outside, I have to say.
Yeah, I can say my mom would have jumped all over that story and been like, you're in by 5:30. Be like, it's dark for another 4.5 hours, Mom, but
Not this time of year.
It added to it too when stories slowly started trickling out too about kids who had seen the beast itself in the area. That started giving it more credence that, okay, maybe this is something we should be scared about.
Are there any particular like sightings or accounts that jump out to you in your mind? Because we only have sort of a handful in front of us that we're going to be talking about in this episode in its entirety. But is there anything in your mind that kind of jumps out?
There is a story. I can't remember offhand the exact names. I believe the little girl's name was Heather. She was about 13 years old. I think it took place in 1990. But I remember her and her friends were outside playing in the woods around her house. I think they were sledding at the time. And they all noticed this extremely large, dark-colored dog, what they assumed was a dog watching them from in the tree line where they were playing. And they all kind of walked close to it out of curiosity. And I remember the story stating that the dog then stood up on 2 feet and, it was gigantic, and they fled in terror, obviously, and the thing chased after them. That really stuck in my mind as, okay, now it doesn't matter where you go, this thing is going to, run after you. It's going to pursue you even when you think you're safe in, a large group. Right. Being young, that's one that really stuck in my mind, hearing that. It's
one of those things where it's like the range of different sightings from kids through to adults. The stuff with children always kind of sticks with you. I'm the same way. And the strength in numbers not really working out is always kind of a bit of an ominous thought. It's like, whatever this thing is, that's the thing too, we talked about in part 1. It's like, at first, it didn't really seem as if we're going along this line of thought that it's a dog creature, that it's sort of more observant rather than predatorial. But it kind of, the accounts we read along the way changed that.
It kind of blurs those lines a little bit.
Yeah, it does. It straddles that line between sort of just this observant Sasquatch-like, ethereal kind of being to like a very predatorial, clearly a carnivore, if you will.
Or scavenger, or a mix of both, potentially. I am currently, Adam, I'm staring at this envelope you sent us. I also have the piece of Bray Road in front of me as well. And I'm just really curious. So written on here, it says it was collected by the Pine Barrens Institute. So I'm assuming that was you.
He's got minions out there.
And it's very specific. It says it's from an intersection of Bray and Hospital Road, and that it was the location of first sighting on October 31st, 1999. So could you tell us a little bit more about the context behind that? Or
so I get, if the envelope was bigger, I could have filled more in, but limited by space and custom shipping and all that.
Indeed. But
that area, it's one that sticks out in my mind a lot because I know the area perfectly. I've been down it. It's a very far down the road area, and what happened during this location, the sighting at this location, is that the woman was turning onto Hospital Road off of Bray Road, and I believe she collided with something, or something ran out at the back of her car. She wasn't sure what it was, so she got out to see if she hit something, and that's when the thing came running towards her car. I think it was the first, I guess, not like attack type thought of a sighting, but, a person was actually in significant danger. There was like scratches on the car. There was, some physical damage. The person was extremely shaken up. So that was like the first. It's kind of like a different type of sighting. It's one that's always stuck out to me. I don't know.
It's almost like a close encounter versus like, I'm comparing it to ufology now.
Yeah.
Being not abducted necessarily, but having a close context encounter versus like a faraway sighting in the distance.
Right. You like, she left the safety of her vehicle, something that could, theoretically, it gives you that false sense of, oh, I'm fine, nothing could hurt me in here. The classic, nightmare in your room, you pull the blanket up, you're safe kind of thing. So like when you get out of the vehicle and it comes, at you and you have to speed away from it and it like grabs your car, that's like one of the first, wow, maybe there's something to this. Maybe it actually is a big predator,
Right.
In the area. Maybe people should be more on guard than what, thinking it's just a joke.
Totally. And, we can go down a million different rabbit holes with this, but I guess the first question that pops into my mind with what you just described, which is totally terrifying. I mean, I'm picturing myself in that situation, and it is like just, I mean,
That's
I don't
like,
even know
that's
what I would
true
do, right?
poop your pants territory.
But this idea of if it's a predator, there's so many different sort of categories we can try to put this in. If we're going pure cryptozoological, or we're talking about something that's some sort of a different hybrid, because if it's just seeking prey, there's easier prey than a car stopped on the side of the road and someone getting, you know what I mean? Like it seems like unless it was just at that exact opportune moment, there's a clearly, something that's easy to attack outside of a car. But there's got to be some other stuff around there that you could try to catch and hunt. That's what cougars and bears and wolves and whatever else does. It's this kind of human aspect to it that it's trying to scare you. That's so weird,
Right. And it's almost like, too, that both the woman that it happened to and the creature itself, it's almost like they were both in the wrong place at the wrong time. The creature made contact with the vehicle, or she made contact with it while turning. Something happened, and it almost seems like it was just mad.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that totally makes sense.
you hit me, so now I have to retaliate to show that, this is my area, type of, like a bluff charge, like a gorilla would do if you go into its territory, or, like a black bear. Same thing. They're going to bluff charge you until you leave. And it's almost like that's what it was making her do.
Yeah, it definitely sounds that way. We covered a story in part 1 too, where there was a similar creature, like whether the Beast of Bray, Dogman, that gets hit by a car similarly, that gets clipped by a truck, and then the vehicle behind saw this happen, and it just was unaffected, which again sort of harkens back to this idea that it's some sort of supernatural being, unless it just kind of just grazed you. Because I mean, getting hit by a moving truck is probably going to leave you a little bit debilitated.
Well, they clipped the back panel of the truck, I think. Yeah, you would think there'd be damage.
So I guess on that note, we're working with something here that's, I mean, I'm hesitant to just straight up ask you the question of what you think this is just yet, because we're kind of been throwing out a million different ideas here. Amber, do you have any suggestions of how I can sort of like better break this down for Adam a little bit, I guess? I mean,
well, for me, I always like to work from the mundane to the most fantastical. You know what I mean? So like, what would be the most mundane explanation? Probably just a coy dog or just a wolf or something. Or,
which
you know what
simply can't be. So, okay, let's go to Adam on that. I mean, what's your take on this being some sort of just purely misidentified phenomena?
I can believe it because the area, southern Wisconsin, is not known for wolves at all. Mm-hmm. They've been out of the area for a long time. We have them up north, but down south, they're not there. It's coyotes. It's, large, tame dogs. But every once in a while, kind of like a cougar, kind of like a mountain lion, all that stuff, a rogue animal will move in and go through and then leave just as fast.
Right.
And a lot of people in the area they mainly see wolves, on TV, in pictures, in books, whatever. But when you actually see a wolf, they're gigantic.
Totally.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility, especially where this road is, that something could have been there as it was just passing through. came out of the woods on one side, dashed across the road into the corn on the other. It was gigantic, maybe as big as, the person's car, stood as high as the I guess, driver's side window, depending on what kind of vehicle they had. And, you see it. It's a monster. I've never seen anything this big in my life. Your imagination runs wild. Oh, this could have been, I swear it turned and looked at me and it said something. Your fear takes over. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but I don't think that can explain all of the other sightings. Out of 10 sightings, I'd say probably misidentification could probably be used for 3.
Yeah.
But there's 7 more then that would have to be something else, because not everyone is going to misidentify a wolf. Someone has seen a wolf before in real life,
Of course. Yeah, totally. I guess on that note then, because obviously Wisconsin and Michigan too, especially, I guess is really well known for Sasquatch sightings. And like Amber alluded to off the top of this interview, there's a lot of that getting lumped into this, where it's like if you're seeing something large and bipedal, and obviously that's dabbling in the realm of the paranormal too. There's a lot of people that don't believe in Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and what is that? Do you think that these things are being conflated, or are these definitively 2 distinct creatures in Wisconsin and Michigan?
See, that's a difficult one to answer, because me personally, I always look at it as, since there's been no definitive proof on either camp, all you can base your evidence and information off of is what someone else has done who has also never seen these things.
Yeah.
So if someone's writing a Bigfoot this way and they want to make, a Dogman seem completely different, they're going to do everything they can to make it different. And then slowly that information is going to get down and everyone's going to be like, yeah, they're different. But I think some of them could just be the same thing, and it's how easily people are scared.
Yeah.
If you get scared by the slightest thing, you're going to think everything is a monster and gigantic and has huge fangs and claws. But if you're someone who's startled and it takes a lot to get you scared, you might just see something standing in the woods looking at you that just kind of lumbers off and doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
A lot of the descriptions of it, though, of the beast itself, it's always, like you said, it's very dog-like. It's got shaggy hair. A lot of the time it says it's only got like three long claws.
Yes. Yep.
Very wolf-like head. So it's kind of hard to mistake that from like a classic description of a Sasquatch, which is very ape-like and, very soft features in comparison to the wolf. But it's one of those things. It's like, do I pick the lesser of 2 evils? Or?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was definitely a hard question.
That's a loaded question right
to
there.
ask.
If anyone can definitively look at you in the eye and say, this is exactly what it is, then those people I don't think they're to be trusted, because no one can say what it is.
That's a good point.
And that's a good answer. That's a really good answer. I guess one of the main reasons I ask it is because in my mind I have these hypothetical scenarios and I'm like, what are the interactions between Sasquatch and dog bipedal creatures in Wisconsin like? What happens when those two run into each other in the woods in Michigan? I don't know.
I believe, something you just said, I want to say there is a video out there. I can't remember. I want to say it's probably from maybe upwards of 5 years ago, no more than that. I think it was someone filmed it outside of their window somewhere in Michigan, and they claim that in the video is both a Bigfoot and a Dogman that meet up in a wooded area out by their house, and they kind of just like stand there for a minute and they each go their separate way.
Gotta find this. I gotta go find this now.
They go their separate ways, or they get like teleported into a UFO.
The funny thing is though, like, I think I've watched it maybe 10 times because I'm always hoping it's like, maybe I watched it wrong. But it's always just the person's like, look at the bottom right. You can clearly see a dog move through here, but it's standing on 2 feet. And it's like, I see something, but there's definitely not as much information as you're saying there is.
Yeah.
But you think there's a Sasquatch and a Dogman there, so maybe you're seeing something? I don't know.
It's a tough call.
That's layering in a lot. I
want to see that video
for sure. Okay. I guess I am kind of, I've worked my way into asking you this, I'm not going to say final question because it's not, but just so semi-final question. We've talked about werewolves, skinwalkers. Amber mentioned the Wahila, which is this cryptozoological phenomena from the north, this massive wolf, well, sort of in between a bear and a wolf, which I guess ties into the Beast of Bray. I mean, I often subscribe to interdimensional hypotheses because I simply have nowhere else to go. I get cornered in, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be a portal here because I have absolutely nowhere else to go in this corner. What the hell do you think is going on here ultimately? Do you what if you had to subscribe to a camp with the Dogman, with the Beast of Bray? Where are you at? Where do you think this is?
My answer is it always upsets someone. So I'll just put that out there right away.
We're good at that.
For some reason, my way of thinking, it seemed someone always gets rubbed the wrong way. But I definitely think when it comes to cryptids of any kind, which this would be in my mind, because it's said to be a flesh and blood creature that we have not classified, I always assume they are strictly flesh and blood, nothing else.
Right.
So if this was anything, it's some undiscovered creature that we just can't track accurately. Whether it's intelligent or not, I don't know. If anything, I'd say its population would probably be extremely low, which is why we can't see them, because they're constantly moving to avoid, maybe changing of the seasons. They feel predators are in the area. They're following a food source of something. But if it is real, the Dogman, Michigan Dogman, Bray Road Beast, more than likely the same species in my mind. It's a creature that's just passing through the area, doing its normal migration patterns, whatever you want to call it, and we just can't track it because we think it doesn't exist.
That's a fair answer. I like that.
I like it. Mm-hmm. And I like going the classic sort of cryptozoological, and that obviously makes the most sense. And if we're going based off the evidence that we have, which is a lot of obviously anecdotal evidence, but also just vocalizations, prints, sort of things that are intangible because it's not a body, it's not definitive video evidence and things like that. And I guess to your point there with the idea of it being a real thing, that's maybe some sort of a mutated timber wolf or something like that. There actually was in that episode of Monster Quest someone who mentioned they were making a comeback in the early 2000s. There was a lot larger timber wolves that were being found. But I guess if that was the case, if someone was to see something bipedal and we did end up finding bones in the woods and was like, oh, these are wolf bones, but it's just a really massive wolf, we wouldn't necessarily associate it with the Beast of Bray or the Michigan Dogman sightings, as opposed to if you found a full Sasquatch skeleton, it's like, okay, this isn't, this isn't Yao Ming's skeleton out in the middle of Wisconsin. This is clearly not, a 7.5 foot tall, whatever. It would be a little bit.
Oh, for sure. If any, like you said, if anyone were to just come across the bones of a giant wolf, that's what they're going to think it is, a giant wolf. They're not going to tie it back to this is what's responsible for all the monster sightings.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be this is an out of place animal that shouldn't be here, which technically out of place animals are considered cryptids. Indeed. Because they're somewhere they are not supposed to be.
Of course.
So it's how do you want to classify it? Do you want to classify it as the fun way of, oh, this is a cryptid, or this just shouldn't be here and, it's done now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we're going to save our little tidbits till the end of the series, unless you wanted to give a little tease here, Amber. But I mean, obviously we lean.
I haven't really made any conclusions, to be honest. I think.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's all still up in the air.
I can say the issue that I have with it seems, so the Bray Road Beast here, at least, the main hub of it took place only for a short amount of time. It was here. There was a few sightings of it. It got news coverage. It took off, and then it was gone. Then other sightings, were happening scattered about, not in Elkhorn, from the area surrounding. Of course, moved out. But a lot of the famous after sightings came afterwards. People would then come forward saying, hey, I have a story, or there was a story in my family. This is probably the same thing. So I think people personally, it's taken on its own legend. It's become its own legend outside of cryptozoology, outside of, a monster. It's got its own name, of course. So people want it to be, magical, supernatural, paranormal, whatever you want to describe it as, to explain why it's been around for so long, rather than, if you look at the sightings and it is moving away from Elkhorn, it's probably a real animal that, again, is just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. So does the moniker of like werewolves to you was just sort of like a Western, like slap it on there, like it's just an easy kind of way for people to understand it. But like in terms of werewolves, like Western European werewolves, like you're thinking that would be a purely cryptozoological misidentification as well, type thing, I guess.
I believe, yeah, the term werewolf, I think that, media outlets, when they get a hold of something like this, it's an attention grabber. Mm-hmm. You slap werewolf on something, people are going to want to read this story. They're going to want to watch the video. So yeah, I think it doesn't mean what it used to mean. It just means, hey, click me and then figure out what this actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, where are we at here, Andrew?
Honestly, I feel like I've already asked Adam a few.
You've
really
asked him a few loaded questions, definitely.
So I think we maybe should like reformulate and do like another interview. I think we're coming down to the end of this one, but we do want to talk to you a little bit about your book.
Yeah, definitely. We've been diving into this little gem for just here and there. It's a great read, to be honest. Like, I'm really enjoying it. I really love your approach too. So, exact title, Monsters in Print. I've got that right, correct? Okay, perfect. And I just love the way that because I read the foreword, and you said, you're straight off the bat, like, I'm not going to edit this. Like, this is straight, pure newspaper clippings. It's periodical pieces. And I absolutely love that approach. I just wanted to say that. And that I love how just obscure these stories are. They're so weird. I was just reading a story about a frogman riding a bicycle through town, and it was amazing.
That is one of my favorite ones.
So good.
I love that story so much.
It's so great. Actually,
not to mention, there was another one I read about Nocturnus. It was like that aberration of evolution, that like half tadpole, half bulldog thing. And to be honest, I think that's going to be an episode.
I can touch on that,
yeah.
which adds to it.
Sweet.
Before I even did this book, before I even found this story, this was probably like a year before. We went on a family vacation up to Wisconsin Dells, and we were out on the lake. I had my kids in the boat. My wife was there. We were driving the boat. My family was there, and I told the kids to look over because there was another boat, and they had a whole bunch of dogs on it. All the dogs were swimming in the water, and they were going back up to their boat, and the family was pulling them out. And I told my kids, I said, hey, look, you see those? Those are lake puppies. They only exist in this lake, and people pull them out, and then they take them home. And they were like, no, you're kidding. I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, look at them all. They're just pulling dog after dog out of this water. And then, a year later, I find this story like, holy crap, lake puppies
they exist.
Apparently are real. And that story has become one of, like, my personal favorites because it's so obscure. It's so... It takes a lot to believe it, but you want to.
I want to so bad.
Oh, yeah.
I want to find another one.
We were kind of chatting earlier about this idea of doing another episode. I'm just going to throw it out there on this. Why not? Doing an episode with you where we just pick out some of the weirdest stuff from your book and kind of have a kind of like the top 10 like weirdest stories, little fun episode with you.
That would be so fun.
Oh, I got a few of them. I think I got my top 10.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Hey, I got a question for you though. I just wanted to ask.
Yes, of course.
Now, in your historic, I guess research on this, do you have the story of one sec, give me a minute so it loads.
No worries.
Do you have the story of Catherine May Degnan?
No. We do not.
I don't think we've come across that, no.
Let's talk about it.
So the story of Catherine May Degnan is what they kind of obscurely link to a dogman in Wisconsin, but it takes place in 1854.
Awesome.
Oh,
Way before
wow.
36.
That's super early.
It's a long stretch, but they're linking it in with the Dogman because of how it acted. If you want me to tell you the whole story, I can send it to you.
Why don't we just do it? Let's do it. Let's rock it. Let's hear it.
So this is called The Strange Abduction of Catherine May Degnan. It was recorded by Fate magazine.
Oh, Fate. Classic.
So much fun.
And what they talk about is they say, I'm just going to read the story right as they have it. So it says, John and his wife, 31-year-old Anne Flynn Degnan, had immigrated from Ireland and were just starting their family. Their daughter, Catherine May, was born in nearby Bloomfield Township a few years earlier on April 23, 1854. Her younger brother, John, was born in 1856. The family's frightening experience began late in May. At the time, the homestead was still surrounded by forest. On Friday morning, May 29th, 3-year-old Catherine was seized from the threshold of the Degnan home by a large and ferocious-looking animal which had emerged from the shadows of the woods. It immediately took off with the girl, heading back towards the dense cover. The frantic screams of her mother caused the fierce animal to drop Catherine after she had been carried some 50 to 100 feet. Incredibly, this was the second time that the animal had appeared and had taken the same girl. On Tuesday morning, May 26, it had come out of the woods and snatched Catherine from the front of her homestead. The animal had succeeded in carrying her 88 yards into the dark woods in spite of the efforts of John and Anna to rescue their daughter before it reluctantly let her go. The animal that had twice grabbed the girl had been seen several times that spring by neighbors, but always at a distance. Their isolated farms, which are hacked out of the forest, were surrounded by large tracts of woods. They did not know what kind of animal it was, but recognized that it had little fear of humans. People that had seen the animal firsthand assumed that it was a bear, but based on the descriptions given by the terrified family, it was anything but. Eyewitnesses did not identify it as a bear, however. Furthermore, Murphy's letter to his brother implied that the creature grabbed the girl in both arms rather than its mouth and ran away like a man. The neighborhood was both alarmed and agitated by the event. Subsequently, a large party of determined township men hunted for the creature beginning on Wednesday, May 27th, looking for its lair, but it did not meet with success. They planned to capture it if it was still in the area, which in 1857 meant that they planned to kill it. The sly creature, unfortunately, though, proved to be quite elusive. Kate survived the harrowing ordeal and never married. She died at Lake Geneva on the morning of January 15th, 1896, of consumption, outliving her father by 12 years. Her brother John was alive during the abductions, but he died in 1889. The last person to witness the abduction firsthand was Anna Degnan, but she died on April 25th, 1902. So everyone who witnessed the event has died, but it was all described as not being an animal. It was an animal-like thing.
That's
Wow,
weird.
I'm really glad you shared that because we hadn't come across that.
No.
And to go back into the towards the turn of the century, that's a big deal. And obviously, nobody around to talk to anymore about it. Oh man, I wish we had.
That's juicy. You should send that over to us anyway.
Yeah,
to
I
the
would
email.
really love for you to send that over. That would be amazing.
Oh, for sure.
And thank you for doing that reading. That was great.
Yeah.
That's going to be an awesome little addition to this for sure.
No problem. This is one of those stories that, even though Fate has covered it, it's kind of like, how do you verify that it actually happened and it wasn't someone, just saying, oh, sure, I've encountered the werewolf. They give a story. But the way that it's described, much like a lot of the stories in the book, it doesn't seem to be like embellished in any way.
No. Those are the hardest ones to pick apart.
They truly are.
Oh man, damn, hey. Yeah, no, I got to read through it myself again and try to break that down, and that's going to make this even harder to try to pinpoint what the hell what we're dealing with. But I love it so much.
That's really intriguing, though, the fact that due to the efforts of the parents, it reluctantly, quote, let it go. You would think it would just keep running.
This story, I'm not sure if you're aware. You probably are, might not be. I don't know, but this brings back memories of I did an article about the Traverse Spine gorilla.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And it was about that family that, you know, a creature came out of the woods and tried to take their daughter and kept coming back around the house, and they had to keep chasing it away. That was described as a Sasquatch type creature, though. This is described as not a bear. So maybe like something that could be described as a Sasquatch. People are saying Dogman, but they're doing the exact same thing. You know, that one was upper Canada. This one is middle of Wisconsin.
Right.
So there's distance between, but they're doing the same thing.
Totally. I mean, I guess when someone just straight says to me, not a bear, like whenever you, even though it's describing something by what it's not, I just picture snout. I mean, bears have that snout. It's just shorter, more stubbed than a wolf would be. And that's like what the Wahila is described as.
And
a
the
lot of time.
bulkiness
It's
of the
like
creature
the
too, right?
short-faced wolf.
Right? Like the bulkiness of the creature as well.
Exactly. It's all very, very bizarre.
Well, for sure. And when you hear someone say, everyone knows what a bear looks like. So if someone is very honest and they're saying it's not a bear, it moved like a man, like you can't really confuse that with anything else.
No, you can't.
And you can tell when someone's lying by how they say something. And it's like a lot of the times it's genuine in how they say it was not a bear. It was not an animal.
That's really weird. Sorry, did we get like an approximate height on this creature in this particular story?
This one, no.
No? Okay.
Clearly quite large.
If it's able to move faster than I guess her parents would and a bunch of men chasing it, then it's and carry the girl at the same time. I'm going to say probably anywhere between 5 and 6 feet.
At least, for
Yeah,
sure.
that would make sense.
Yeah.
Plus running through the woods over stuff. It has to be large enough to overstep all that down debris.
Right.
But again, that's all just a theory.
Of course.
I'm curious.
Such
I
a
wonder if
cool
there's
story,
any
though.
vocalizations. Obviously, we didn't get any of those details in that initial account. That just reminds me, sorry, I'm just reminded of the X-Files episode with the Wolfman that ends up being an Indigenous member who is dressed like a wolf and acts like a wolf. You know what I mean?
Was
Do
that
you remember
our
that?
Murdoch Mysteries? I think you're talking about.
Oh, sorry. I'm totally confusing those two. Yeah, that was a Murdoch. But that was a very intriguing episode, right? Because he was essentially acting on vengeance because he was left for dead in the woods by a group of white hunters. What if this could have been interpreted as some sort of act of vengeance against these particular pioneers or settlers or farmers or wherever they were?
Yeah, potentially.
Definitely could have. They do try and link this one later on to another sighting in 1869 about the same animal.
Okay.
This is also included in the Fate article. But this time it was seen November 5th, 1869, east of Janesville on Delavan Road, which is now Highway 11, which is literally just right around the corner from me.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
It was seen on a few evenings by farmers. It was described as being ferocious. It fearlessly attacked some large and rough farm dogs. From appearances, the local farmers suggested it looked like it was capable of quickly devouring a good-sized boy. Once again, non-witnesses proposed that it was also a bear, which was a suggestion scoffed at by those who had seen it. And that's all they say about that one.
And all before the 1930s. That's the part about this that I love. It's just
That's
that
cool.
It's
Well, that one
always
was-
good to have these accounts early.
What was that? 1869 or 67?
1869.
69. Okay. Super early.
If you could send us that as well, that'd be great.
Oh, for sure.
Just
Yeah,
send
I'll definitely send those over.
Awesome. Okay, great. Well, I mean, Adam, man, thank you so much for coming on the show, and please set some time aside in the new year because we want to have you back on like really, really soon. And if you start doing some more recordings for Pine Barrens, like we would love to come chat with you as well.
Totally.
I'm thinking about doing them again when the new year comes up. I want to get something set up where, I don't have to worry about it just not recording. So, yeah, I'll definitely keep you guys in mind, and we will make something work.
Awesome.
Cool.
Sounds good. But before we let you go, do you want to just take a second, just let people know, like, we're going to have a link for your book in the show notes for this, but where they can find the book, where they can find Pine Barrens Institute and all that stuff.
We can be found at, and let me clarify, when I say we, I'm specifically talking about just me, but I always refer to the site as we. But it can be found at pinebarrensinstitute.com. And then from there, you can find links to our Instagram, Twitter, store, articles, interviews, all that stuff. It's all one convenient place.
Awesome. Sweet. And
Yes.
then, of course, like I just said, you guys can click the link in the show notes here and check out Adam's book. And yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on. Make sure to check you lock the doors at night tonight for The Beast of Bray Road. And we'll talk to you again really soon.
Well, that was an awesome little chat.
Definitely. That was super fun. And man, oh man, I'm still not sure what to make of the Beast of Bray, but Adam definitely contextualized things a little bit for us.
He really did add that kind of like from the ground level kind of perspective, because he was right there living it, growing up in Wisconsin, which is so cool.
And we've got this little piece of history on the podcast table forever now, which is just amazing.
So cool. And along with that, we've got so many different threads and things to follow up on from that conversation, which I can't wait. Adam's going to send us over some of those resources. And along with that, we're going to have the conclusion of our series in the next coming few weeks.
That's right. So, you know what? We'll tease you a little bit. It may even be coming next week, but likely sticking to our regular release times, but we'll see about that. But we're going to be diving into the ancient history of these very strange bipedal canine creatures and trying to tie some ancient mythology and stories from going way, way back, whether it's ancient Egypt and Egyptology or Greece, a lot of different cultures,
We might
witnessed
even
and knew about these creatures.
Yeah, I think we have a Herodotus reference in this.
We
next
definitely
one too.
do. Oh, for sure. So yeah, we're going to be trying to tie that into this modern cryptozoological phenomenon that exists in Wisconsin, Alaska, Michigan, and these places we've talked about so far.
And beyond.
And it gets very strange, stranger than it already has been. So stay tuned for that. And thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode on Into the Portal.
Your gateway to the bizarre.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.